Okay, I've been wanting to do this video for a while. There's so much content to cover in this video, but what I want to talk about is regulatory issues with proof of weak hands. And not just proof of weak hands, the smart contract space, the cryptocurrency space as well. But, someone asked me, what do you think would be your biggest risk, the biggest risk, future risk in this platform? And I said, without question, it's regulations. And I want to cover that in detail because this is something that YouTubers literally have no clue about this. And this is something that I actually do have a little experience in just from my past business experiences. There's a saying out there that says, if I knew what I know now, I would have never started a business. If I knew what I was getting into, I would have never started a business. And that saying is always talking about the legal aspects of the business. There's so many things that people just aren't aware of. And quite honestly, it doesn't always seem fair and it doesn't always make sense, but it's important to understand. And I'm watching things happen right now and I'm like, wow, people are setting themselves up potentially and they don't even know it. Anywhere from developers to marketers to YouTubers, so on and so forth. But before we get into all that, let's just look at a quick market recap. We are at $259 billion. BTC dominance 47.4. That's incredibly high. I think this is probably good for the market overall. And we've been pretty flatline in the past 24 hours for the most part. Didn't go down, didn't go up. Ethereum sitting at 414. We'll see if 400 will hold. Bitcoin sitting at 7160, and we'll see if 7,000 holds. However, let me just say this. Nothing on this video or in my entire channel is ever considered legal advice or financial advice or whatever. I will just tell you about what I'm personally doing. When it comes to Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of my cryptocurrency investments, I see this as an accumulation phase. I don't trade in and out of a lot of currencies at all. That is absolutely a recipe long-term to lose money. It's a winning recipe in a bull market. It's always a losing recipe in a bear market, which makes it a 50-50 win-loss in most cases. So I just look at the projects that I like, and it needs to be something that I can like potentially for the next 1 to 3, even 5 or 10 years. And my whole goal is just accumulation. And so Bitcoin and Ethereum absolutely fit in that. It's accumulation. I buy a little bit periodically over time, no matter what the price is, because I believe long term these prices could hit 700,000 or 40,000 or whatever potentially. So I have a long term vision for what I think can happen. Most people just do not yet realize how early phase that we are, and some of what I'm going to talk about today is really going to hit on that a little bit. I'm very interested in the smart contract space, or as blockchain for what is best says, the virtual deposit contract space, or virtual contract deposit, or whatever he calls it. I love that terminology, probably the best. And I'm a big fan of proof of weak hands 3D, and I'll cover that maybe a little bit later. But the future of proof of weak hands concerns me a little bit. I see some discussion going on in Discord, and I see the developers asking for feedback, and what everybody's focused on is they're focused on, being able to create income, create dividends, anything that will throw dividends. So for example, right now, they toss out the idea, should we continue to put out unique projects? We have several projects that we think that we're in the process of developing that are totally unique. And these are the type of projects that, can change the market, like, their game POWH3D. Well, they've got a P3X coin, which is some sort of an exchange-based coin. We don't really know what that's going to be like. They've only mentioned it once or twice. There's a Sirius token. I don't know if that's the same thing as a P3DX coin or P3X coin. There's a couple more games coming as well that are primarily original to gaming in the smart contract space in general, just like POWH3D was. That sort of stuff is fascinating, and I actually think, and I've said this on this channel, and I think I should cover this again, the future of proof of weak hands, this particular smart contract can be incredible. It is by far my horse in the smart contract space. In so many ways, they were the originals. They continue to do fresh new development. They're not copycats. They've got ideas. They're working on stuff. It is incredible. That's not financial advice for you. That's me. I love this space. I love what they're doing. And I think that they're onto something. And I even wonder, I question sometimes, and I hope I don't come off as arrogant when I say this, but I'm like, do the developers really get how far this could go? Like, I think, yeah, I could decentralized insurance, decentralized not medical records, sorry. Well, decentralized services, like anyone could charge and use P3D tokens, especially if you were already a P3D owner. You could, charge for services strictly to P3D. Why would you do it? Because you have a community of people that may use your service. I could cover that in a whole other video. But there are so many things. I mean, I could see people putting retirement accounts, life insurance in something similar, if not P3D, something very similar. What these guys are on the cusp of could be massive long term. We're talking 5, 10, 20 years. In fact, we're talking after some of the stuff that they're going to face some major regulatory issues ahead. And all of crypto is. And in my experience, anytime you face regulation, it is first negative before it's positive. So regulation always comes down. Typically regulation occurs. Rarely is it, okay, here's the new law and here's the regulation. By the way, it's important to understand there's a difference in a law and a regulation. But here's the new law, here's the regulation. Let's help you become compliant. That is rarely how it comes down. And it all depends on the severity of what happens, and we'll cover that more. So we got a lot to cover. I'm going to talk about the different industries, the financial industry, affiliate, gaming, gambling. We're going to cover it all. I'm going to talk about the defense. You often hear this defense, well, it's a smart contract, it can't be shut down. I'm going to cover that defense as well. I don't 100% agree with that at all, and I'll tell you exactly why. And it's the thing that I think everybody's missing or they're not thinking about. And I actually think it doesn't matter that it can get shut down or not, potentially. And I'll cover that more as well towards the end of the video. So first up, let's talk about this. So the major number one headway that Proof of Weak Hands 3 is going to have is this. And by the way, this goes for Zephr, this goes for, Lynia, whatever that one is called. It goes for all of them. The very first one is the financial industry regulations. So first of all, they can't even figure out yet if Bitcoin is classified as a currency or not. And when that happens, if they ever say, yes, it is a currency for certain, what they kind of do now is part of the law says it is a currency in these situations or it's not treated like a currency in these situations. So somewhere along the way, we are so early, and this is important to understand. And this video can sound very negative, but it's important to understand part of the exciting thing about being in this space is that we are so early that the rest of the mainstream world, legal system, everything, we're so early that they can't even quite figure out what to do in this space. And in some ways, that is so exciting. However, as an investor in this space, it's also why you could potentially lose big. So they've got to first figure out, is this a currency, is it not a currency? And if it is, or what makes it defined as a currency versus not a currency? Here's the other thing they have to figure out when it comes to inside the financial space. So one is it a currency or not? The other one is based off the investing regulations. They're coming down on ICOs right now in the US. The other one is if you take something like NEO, for example, or proof of stake earnings that's going to happen with Ethereum, are those considered dividends? And if so, how are you going to treat that? And if they say that it's an unregistered security or whatever, just like ICOs right now, the federal government's really leaning hard on ICOs, and it's not in a positive way. Now, listen, I don't necessarily agree with this, but it doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. I'm not the one who gets to set the laws and write the laws or interpret the laws. But right now, I think I've talked about it before on my channel. I have personally never invested in an ICO. It doesn't mean that I never would necessarily. It's just not my style of investing. However, I think it's so unfair that average people can't choose to invest in an ICO. And what they're going to call it is they're going to call it an IPO, and they're going to say that you have to be, whatever. I'm drawing a blank right now what they call the term. A qualified investor, I think is what they call it. Or a sophisticated investor. You have to be a sophisticated investor, which just means that you have a large net worth and you make a lot of money every year. That's what it actually means. That's the term that classifies someone as sophisticated, more wealthy. So early projects, you're going to be cut off from unless you're considered a sophisticated investor. I think that's so unfair. Now, granted, are there schemes in this space? Yes. Are there schemes in the stock market? I don't know. Anyone ever heard of Enron, WorldCom? The financial housing bubble? Of course, there's schemes everywhere. But there's also big rewards in those markets. Do ICOs always make money? No, the overwhelming majority lose money for the first year or the first few years. However, are there big wins in the IPO market? Absolutely. I meant to say IPO. In the IPO market, absolutely. But the average, mom and pop, making 30 to 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year, you can't participate because you're not considered a sophisticated investor. So I don't necessarily agree with it, but it is what it is. So if these regulations come down, that's not good for the future. Now, obviously, proof of weak hands and a lot of these smart contracts, they're not considered ICOs. But the question is, are their returns considered dividends? Now, again, everything that I'm telling you, you can make an argument for or against. That's important for you to understand. So if you're sitting here saying, no, it's not a dividend because it's not at a certain set schedule, it's not pre-scheduled, it's not this, it's not that, by the definition of dividend, it doesn't apply. It's important for you to understand that all those definitions are interpreted differently across various industries. And even if you're 100% correct, when the way that you prove that you're correct is through the legal system, and that takes a lot of time, a lot of stress, and a lot of money. And are you prepared to defend yourself in that position? You don't have to worry about that necessarily unless you're a developer, but that's something that I wonder if people think about or even consider. Here's the challenge. All this stuff is interconnected. So it may not, if for example, with proof of weak hands, if the P3D token or if Ether is not considered a currency, then it's probably not considered a dividend potentially. So all this stuff is kind of interconnected and related, but it's important to be aware of. So here's another one. There's all sorts of laws that exist in the affiliate industry. You can't have there's all sorts of stuff. Those laws tend to be pretty lax until you require someone to buy in to become an affiliate. And then that puts you into all these potential business opportunity type laws. And that whole industry is messy and crazy. And there's all sorts of regulations that fall in that industry as well. So now, a lot of the, like people with weak hands 3D, you got to have 100 tokens. That could be considered potentially that you have to purchase to be able to offer, quote unquote, the investment, quote unquote, the business opportunity, however they choose to classify it. It's no longer just an affiliate relationship when you have to, quote unquote, buy in. Now, I can tell you that, and I can tell you there are very large companies that allow their customers to refer people, and they only make that available to customers. They're just not public about it, etc. And as I tell you this, I'm telling you that these laws are not always applied equally across the board. And just because you see something on the internet happening, don't assume that that's okay and it's safe. A lot of times, it just hasn't been through scrutiny yet. I'll give you a very, very basic one in marketing. It is 100% illegal to create false scarcity. You cannot have a timer on your website saying that this product is gone or this special deal is going to be gone in 3 days unless it is literally going to be gone for 3 days. Used to, you could get away with that. You could say, hurry up and call within the next hour, or click, add to cart in the next hour. This price is going to be gone forever. You can no longer do that unless that price really is 100% gone forever. Otherwise, it's called false scarcity. So I tell you that to say that just because you see someone else doing it doesn't mean that it's okay. You will never see extremely large, reputable companies using something like false scarcity. You'll oftentimes some sort of new internet marketer is going to be doing that, for example. He doesn't know any better. Some small company, they don't really know yet because they haven't been under the scrutiny. They haven't been fined or had to defend themselves in a court of law or whatever. So we got the financial industry that could be a concern. Is it a currency? Is it investment? ICO, dividends, etc. The other one is affiliates. How's that going to be categorized? Is that going to be an issue? And again, I think a lot of these are overlapping. Here's another one, gaming. I want to come back to gaming. No, I'll go ahead and hit it now. Gaming. So one of the thoughts going forward with Proof of Weak Hands 3D is do these big projects or to keep, quote unquote, people engaged to prevent, let me show you. to prevent some stagnation, maybe put out a few smaller games. And they've specifically referenced gaming, like casino gaming. And so, and the reason they want to do that is to create more of this, the volatility, and less of this, because this is really stagnant and it's just not amazing. They want to try to get rid of this and create a lot more up and down, a lot more volatility. And so by using things like games, like casino type games that, you know, maybe take a 1% edge or whatever, and they send it back to token holders, then that can give people more of a reason to buy and sell. They can earn more dividends, rewards, et cetera, et cetera. It keeps things interesting. So there's this big thought about doing that. From a practical level, I have no problems with it. I think it's a great idea from a practical level. But from a future regulatory level, I really kind of wish P3D wouldn't go in that direction. I mean, they got POWH3D, and arguably that is kind of a casino game, arguably. Or outright, it is a casino game. It's not even arguable. However, at least it's revolutionary and it's different and that sort of thing. And they keep coming out with stuff like that. But when you start going straight into, you know, roulette, you know, video poker, that sort of thing, now you start getting into a space that is absolutely already regulated and defined. Most states in the U.S. you can't do it. In fact, every state in the U.S., you as a U.S. citizen, well, there's no actual law against a U.S. citizen, but there's no company or individual allowed to be able to legally. Now you can find it. There's poker sites out there that cater to American citizens, but they're not here in the U.S. But they exist. There's even a Bitcoin site. I think there's a couple of Bitcoin sites that are 100% Bitcoin. They're not here in the U.S., but we'll come back to that in a moment. But I'll tell you that place is already regulated. You are asking for potential problems. And Proof of Weekends 3D, if they go to more of a gaming route, some sort of exchange route, a marketplace route, other use cases that can produce dividends, that's going to be incredible. Incredible. Even POWH3D, I think, you know, they're probably skating the line a little bit, but you're not looking like you're just a gaming platform. When you start looking like you're a gambling platform, that's a problem. I mean, not only do you got the gambling issues, gaming issues, now you got potentially unregulated lottery or unregulated or unregistered lotteries. That's going to create potential issues down the road. We don't know yet. It hasn't got big enough. It hasn't got enough scrutiny yet. And again, is cryptocurrency considered currency? Most of us want cryptocurrency, all of it, to be considered currency. But projects like this, if it's considered a currency, again, that falls into a whole other category for certain. I think that they're a little safer if it's not considered currency. But that may be debatable as well. Everything is open to negotiations. I'm telling you, there's so many things to be able to get figured out. And people are like, oh, we want regulation, we want regulation. No, not really. I mean, regulation typically isn't amazing. I'm always a fan of a little less regulation. But they're going to regulate the space. There's too many. I mean, cryptocurrencies are competing with some of the biggest power players in the world. And some of those power players are trying to jockey to figure out which side of technology they're going to be on. And I do see a long-term path, at least as a currency, at least one cryptocurrency becoming a mainstream currency. But that long-term path is very long with a lot of bumps in the road before that happens. And maybe I'll put that in another video. If you want to know more about that, just let me know. Let's talk about who could be at risk. So, and what kind of risk are you at? Now, okay, so what are you saying? What's going to happen? Here's what potentially not a lot, but probably enough to at the very least put people out of business and potentially behind bars and jail. So if any of these smart contracts are seen to be totally scamming, you know, they're not following a smart contract, they're misrepresenting themselves. If any of them actually end up being, I know it's a smart contract, you can't do that. I'm going to get to the smart contract defense here in a moment because it is so overrated. However, if any of them end up being an outright scam, a BitConnect or whatever, BitConnect's biggest problem was not that they're a Ponzi scheme. They may have been a Ponzi scheme. No one's ever actually been able to prove that. The government hasn't proved that yet. But that's not the biggest issue. The biggest issue with BitConnect is that they exit scammed. That's the biggest issue with BitConnect. However, you can look at BitConnect and see, you know, do I think Trayvon James and all those guys, do I think they knew what was going on? Do I think they were part of the system? They were part of the developers. They created it. I'm not saying none of them knew anything, but my guess is most of them didn't know anything. My guess is they just started promoting it because they thought, wow, this could be profitable. And they were actually successful at it. And so this comes back to who can be at risk. Listen, if anything is considered, if it's ever considered an outright scam, what most people don't realize is it's not the website that gets in trouble. It's not the developer that gets in trouble or the company owner or the manager that gets in trouble. It's practically anyone who profited off of it. And this, you need to do some research on this law. This has occurred over and over and over. I personally know at least one person who unknowingly represented a company that ended up being unscrupulous. And I mean unknowingly. And I should say I don't personally know them. It's a friend of a friend. I personally have a friend who knows someone who made $100,000 several years ago promoting a company who basically misrepresented their entire product line. And no one actually realized that it was being misrepresented. But this person ended up getting in trouble. And essentially, everyone who profited are in a bit of hot water. Now, are they in the same type? No. But there's things called clawback returns, which is where you're responsible for every dollar that you made. Plus, they can do the whole, whatever they call it, where you got to pay, even more money back, retribution, whatever it's called. So anyone, if anything is ever considered a scam, any promoter, any marketer, any developer, anything that helped and actually made a profit, then without question, you carry liability. Most people don't realize that. They think, oh, like these high yield investment programs. Oh, you can make money on them. Yeah, you can. But by law, you're just as guilty and responsible in something like a high yield investment program. That's not a smart contract, by the way. I'm just giving you an example. If something's considered a scam, like this ARB token out there, I don't know enough about it, so I'm not trying to call it an outright scam, but I start reading on it and I'm like, this looks like this could be bad. I got bit once before doing research on BitConnect, and I actually bought in thinking, okay, and I can do an entire video on what it was about BitConnect that made me think this could be absolutely real. I could do an entire video on that, or at least it could be real in the short term. I knew long term it couldn't maintain. If they were doing a trading robot algorithm long term, they could not be able to trade because at some point the volume would be too big. Algorithm trading is real. It does occur. No bot has traded successfully for years. Some has made it a few years, but they always end up running into problems eventually. And if nothing else, they put themselves in a problem based off of scale. And BitConnect could have done that. If they were 100% legit, and who knows, maybe they were, but if they were going to run into problems eventually because they would not have been able to keep making the returns. They would not had to have exit scammed. That's what makes it look like, oh yeah, they totally weren't legit. Why else would they have exit scammed? And let everybody hold them back, because that means they ran off with the money in theory. If they were obviously legit, and obviously that makes it look like they weren't legit. However, there's plenty of people that wanted to promote. There's plenty of people that were jealous of Crypto Nick, for example, because that guy was, he had all these videos up and they wanted to be the next Crypto Nick. What they didn't realize, and I'm willing to bet you Crypto Nick didn't realize, was that he was taking on a tremendous amount of liability that he thought, he wasn't the company, he wasn't the organization, he didn't have any blame. Listen, I actually don't agree with the situation where the promoter, especially if they do not know, if it can be proven that the promoter did not know, they've had no contact with, company CEOs, developers, board of directors, whatever, they've had no contact, and that contact can't be found, then, it's amazing to me how many people are like, oh, you promoted a scam, you're a bad guy. Yet they were all trying to promote the same thing. They just weren't successful at it. So the hypocrisy is kind of crazy. But the bottom line is, I don't think most of these smart contracts are going to be considered outright scams. But when you start looking at things like, but can they potentially be in a lot of trouble? Yes. When you start looking at things that they offer gaming, an affiliate platform, financial industry, it's a regulatory headwind. And unfortunately, the smart contract defense doesn't work. First of all, people say, just get your lawyers. That is such a difficult thing to do, and people don't realize it. Let me just say this. I hope Proof of Weak Hands 3D does not become a gaming platform. Let the Zethrs out there do that. The Lynias do that. Let them go do that. I hope proof of weak hands doesn't go down that. And if they do have games where you can earn money, or there's games of chance or games of skill. By the way, anything considered a game of skill is far better than anything considered a game of chance under regulations. It's not perfect, it's just better. However, if it's considered a game of skill and proof of weak hands or P3D tokens are not considered currencies, the irony is I kind of want them to be considered currencies one day, personally. But that would be better if it's considered a game of skill and it doesn't have the and the token is not considered currency. Then in that scenario, I mean, this isn't legal advice, but they just mitigate a lot of potential regulatory issues in that case. So let's talk about the smart contract defense first of all. Oh, I want to finish this up. I want proof of weak hands 3D to start coming out with projects that get away from the gaming space eventually. I think it's a great thing marketing-wise in the beginning, especially if you come out with unique, fun, interesting games, especially that don't appear to be just about a money grab. Anytime something's a money grab, that's the challenge. I let the Zethrs out there and the Lynias or Lynias or whatever, let those guys be gaming platforms. I think those guys, with all due respect, have nothing innovative to offer. Proof of weak hands 3D, I see it as innovation, and I'm enthusiastic about it. I'm excited by it because of that. Let's talk about the smart contract defense. It's a smart contract. First of all, they can't shut it down. They don't need to shut it down. All they need to do is take the volume away, and the project is essentially dead. All they have to do is get people to want to stop using it. And anytime the price drops, people are going to stop using it. All they got to do is take down the website. They can do that. They can take down the website. But if they take down the website, then we can still interact with the smart contract. You're right. But that becomes challenging if Etherscan ever gets subpoenaed. And maybe I don't have an understanding there. Maybe there's a way that Etherscan can't stop access. Yeah, but there's other ways to access the smart contract. I understand that. But what you need to realize is, okay, I'll give you a great example. Years ago, for not as a professional, but as a hobbyist, I played poker online years ago. Years ago, you could go to Full Tilt Poker, or you could go to any of those poker sites. I'm trying to think. Oh, no, it wasn't Poker Stars, was it? There is a Poker Stars, but I think it was, yeah, Full Tilt Poker and Poker Stars. You could go there and you'd see 100,000, 200,000 people playing at any given time, live, right now, on the website. All the U.S. government did was came after those two companies, and they shut down the websites. And everybody used to say on the poker forums, it doesn't matter, someone else is going to offer poker, blah, blah, blah. They shut down the websites, and they made it basically illegal through regulation for banks to be able to give funding knowingly to online gaming sites. So technically, they didn't make it illegal for the players to play. Not at that time. It may be now, but it wasn't at that time. But they made it difficult to put money on. So by the way, incidentally, a lot of those websites started accepting Bitcoin, the ones that still allowed North American or Americans to play. So people were partially right. Yeah, they still found a way to play. But today, if you go to an online poker site, literally, they'll have a few hundred. If they have 1,000 people actively playing, I mean, that's doing amazing. But a lot of times you can go in, there's 200, 300, 400 people playing, as opposed to 200, 300, 400,000 people playing. Well, if you see that sort of smart contract volume decrease, the smart contract's essentially dead. Yeah, it's still there, but who's using it? I mean, what's it worth? Who's using the projects? I mean, so the idea that they can't kill it, they don't have to kill it. And by the way, currently a developer has never, it's still a new space. To my knowledge, an actual developer has never, been imprisoned or been fined or had any sort of legal issue that I'm aware of with any of their projects, as far as I know. Unless they were doing, like an ICO offering in the US, that's different. But as far as my currently that's never happened. But there's nothing to say that it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. Well, the smart contract's already created. It's already happened. I understand. But if they deem some part of it illegal for some reason, it's still an issue. Now, am I trying to say that, we're practically screwed? Absolutely not. Let me give you an example. And this is incredible. I told you what the government is challenging to fight. It doesn't mean it can't occur, but it has to occur with companies that are extremely powerful, that have very deep wallets. Very deep wallets. Because the government, listen, if federal scrutiny comes down, typically what they do is they freeze all assets, and then you're supposed to defend yourself in court. You have no financial assets to be able to, you better hope your lawyer accepts Bitcoin, but they freeze all assets, and then you're supposed to defend yourself. And obviously that's an unfair fight. It's like trying to have you fight with your hands tied behind your back, but that's how it is on a federal level. State level is a little bit different. And we recently saw Genesis Mining, which is a mining company that mines Bitcoin. They just did something that was incredible. Incredible. And it speaks volumes to the legitimacy, I believe, of Genesis Mining. Now, you might not think cloud mining is profitable, or at least not very profitable. And I would probably agree with you in that scenario. However, I have invested in cloud mining in the past. That's how I know this, because I'm on their email list. But that is incredible. The fact that they actually had their legal team, they went to bat, which I'm certain cost a tremendous amount of resources, and within a relatively short amount of time, several weeks, a few months, they basically had a cease and desist order overturned. But the financial resources that had to take, no smart startup company would be able to do that. And they could attempt to avoid it, but then you're running into, again, future potential issues. I think the best thing to do is no one in the cryptocurrency space is going to be able to avoid all of this. I think the fact that it's a smart contract and it's transparent is very good. But I want to say this, a lot of people are investing into like Zephr and Lynia and all those things. You better know that that smart contract is solid. Solid. Not only are they outright in the gaming space, but people think that if it's a smart contract, smart contracts can be written in such a way that they can still be scammed. Meaning, because not everyone knows how to read a smart contract. I don't know how to read a smart contract. Now, the interesting thing about POWH3D is there's actually a video out there where a Solidity developer did read through the contract. He read through it line for line. However, that's not occurred with POWH3D. And of course, people say that it's been, audited by QuantStamp. I don't necessarily know that. The reality is I don't know if the guy on the internet who read through the contract actually knew what he was doing, but it was a great demonstration and enough for me to trust it personally. But I understand that it's still high risk. But they've conducted themselves so far well, and I'm assuming they'll continue to be. And they've been pretty transparent, actually a lot transparent in the Discord, even with potential issues that they see. So I like that. I think that bodes very well for their credibility long term. But I don't know about these other ones. I don't know if anyone's reviewed Zephr. I don't know if anyone's reviewed the Lynia. And just because a developer said it got reviewed by whatever organization, you just better know, because that's where the rubber meets the road. Now I got to tell you, the fact that it is a smart contract though is good, because someone can read it and someone can tell if it's on the up and up. And I don't know if there's a way to deactivate smart contracts. I know that yes, typically smart contracts can be deactivated, but I don't know if they all can't be deactivated, or what can be changed. Certain parameters can be changed in smart contracts. Things like, depending on how it's set up, like I know, for example, in proof of weekends, they can change the masternode earnings. The requirements. They went from 5 proof of weekends tokens to 100. I actually think that they started at 100, went to 5, and went back to 100. So and that was written in such a way for that to be allowed to be able to be changed. I actually think it should probably be 0. That would allow them to. Actually, they don't even should allow masternodes. I think it would. Listen, the proof of weekends 3D. They pay 3% one time, one off. It's not very much of a reward commission at all. Not very much. Someone literally would have to put in $1,000 for you to make $30, and the next time they put in $1,000, you don't get anything. It's not sticky. It doesn't, retain or whatever. I think that I know why they did. They did it because they wanted people to promote it. But the project in and of itself is so incredible, so incredible. I think that it would have got promoted probably with or without the 3%. Personally, but I could be wrong on that. But ideally, I think it'd be a good idea for them to get rid of it because it's one less potential regulatory issue to ever have to deal with. Ever. These other platforms, if their smart contract's not solid, then there's going to be some issues. Here's another thing. There's some liability based on all parties involved who profit, even if a contract gets hacked, arguably. And again, anyone could file a lawsuit against anything. It doesn't mean that you're going to, it doesn't mean that you'd necessarily be in trouble, but it would mean that you'd have to spend time, money, and resources to defend yourself. Is it worth it to spend time, money, and resources to defend yourself? But if in my opinion, for the future of P3D, I would like to see them get away from the gaming space eventually, and I would like to see them get away from the affiliate space. And then the only area that they're dealing with is the financial industry, and the entire cryptocurrency world is having to deal with the financial industry, that aspect of it. And I think, listen, I'm optimistic that all this stuff is going to be figured out. But what I'm certain, the reason I made this video is I'm certainly aware of the fact that most people, when I see Discords and I see other YouTubers and I see comments, most people are absolutely clueless to what actually can happen and what actually is possible on the downside. The upside is all this stuff eventually gets regulatory blessings of some sort, and the sky is the limit. Like, my most optimistic scenario for P3D is it actually overtakes Bitcoin. I actually believe, there's a part of me that believe that if Bitcoin becomes a cryptocurrency, that P3D could overtake it. Simply because the very nature with the 10% fees in and out of the coin, and then people wanting to hold the coin and own it, I mean, you become a part of it. It's hard to, listen, I own P3D tokens. I have never been a part of a community where you literally feel like you're a part of the project. Now, part of that's the devs and how they communicate so well and so openly and so transparently. But part of it is the longer you hold it, the more you want to hold it. Even, recently several big YouTubers sold out. But practically all of them have expressed some remorse. Two have come back. I think P3D Heme is coming back. Gotta love that guy. Crypto Yardy put out a cryptic video today. Not very cryptic, but one of his incredible, masterful music videos talking about he's coming back. And so it's just fascinating to see and the experience of how you feel so connected to a project. So if you imagine a coin or a token that people feel so connected to, and then there's a bit of an ownership rights that takes place, and at the same time it earns these rewards or these dividends. There's an issue with calling it dividends, by the way, because if it ever is considered a dividend, that's a mega financial issue. I try not to call it dividends. I try to call it rewards or whatever. And listen, presentation does matter. Presentation absolutely matters. If you present something as an investment, that is a problem from a regulatory standpoint. And investing is far more of an issue as presenting it as a quote unquote investment is potentially, in my opinion, a much bigger issue than even a game, for example. But neither here nor there, we are in fascinating times, and it's important. I make this for those of you who watch my channel, just to be aware, just to protect yourself. And if you're investing in this space, just be mindful. Go in with your eyes wide open. Don't buy into every project because you want to be the first one in. No, do some research, find what you believe in, and if you believe in it, sink into it. But understand some of the potential risks that are out there and do your own research. I've given you enough right here in this video for you to go to, your free legal friend Google and just start doing some research. And it'll open your eyes wide open. The most frustrating thing is the laws are not applied equally across the board. They are not all black and white, and many of them are very gray. I had a buddy of mine who was in the regulated energy space, and he started a company in that space, and he told his lawyer when he was setting up the company, listen, I am not the type of person that wants to do anything illegal. I have rarely ever gotten a speeding ticket in my lifetime. He goes, so I want to make certain that I am so above board, so squeaky clean, so solid white knight that no questions can be asked. And the lawyer responded and said, sir, you should shut down your business today and never consider opening it, because you're going into an industry where the laws are not crystal white clear. So you are going to be facing some regulatory, financial, or legal headwinds just going into it. There's plenty of things we can do to mitigate risk, but you're going to have those regulatory risks. And I think that's true for all of the crypto space. By the way, that company ended up doing incredibly well, doing over $1 billion in billing in the deregulated financial industry space. So the moral of that story is they've been in business for many, many years, and they've done very, very well for themselves. So thank you so much for watching this very long video. And I kind of hesitated to do it because I knew it was going to be long. But if you watch my stuff on YouTube, then I just want you to be able to be aware. I want you to be a little more educated than the rest of the general population out there on this space. I would love to hear your questions, your comments below. Again, I can't give anyone financial advice, legal advice. This is just stuff that I've learned from my own research over the years. Thank you so much for watching. Have an incredible day.